He was 7,800 miles from home when the notification lit his screen. Just another evening check on camera 07. The same ritual he'd performed every night for 5 years. But what flashed across that feed made Richard Hale's breath catch in his throat. His daughters, the twins neurologist said, would never stand. And a woman he'd hired 3 weeks ago who kept breaking every rule he'd set. Richard's hands went cold because what was unfolding in that playroom violated everything medicine had promised him. It violated everything he'd learned to accept. 5 years ago, Richard Hale held his wife's hand as life slipped from her body. Grace died on a June morning in the delivery room. Complications during childbirth. A cascade of failures the surgical team couldn't stop. The monitors flatlined at 6:47 a.m. She took her last breath before she could hear her daughters take their first. Isla and Kiana, born at 6:51 and 6:53, survived those first minutes. But their spines didn't. Rare spinal cord complication during emergency C-section. Permanent paralysis from the waist down. Richard stood in that hospital hallway listening to words that rewrote his entire future. "Mr. Hale, we saved the girls, but the damage is extensive. They'll never walk." Grace was gone. And the daughters she'd prayed for through 4 years of waiting, 2 miscarriages, 7 months of bed rest, would spend their lives in wheelchairs. Richard made a promise at her funeral. "I'll give them everything. Every chance. Every hope. But grief doesn't make you a good father. It just makes you afraid of losing what's left." He hired 17 caregivers in 4 years. The first left the twins in soiled diapers for hours while she watched television. The second over-medicated them until they were listless and hollow-eyed. One mocked their attempts at therapy behind his back, captured on the very cameras he'd installed. Another posted photos of their wheelchairs on social media with captions about patience and tragedy. The worst, a highly recommended specialist, told him to his face that he was wasting money on therapy. "Accept reality, Mr. Hale. Some things can't be fixed." After that, Richard stopped trusting faces. He started trusting lenses. He installed 24 cameras throughout the penthouse. Every corner, every angle, every room the girls occupied. He could monitor from Dubai, from London, from Tokyo. He watched the feeds during flights, in conference rooms. At 3 in the morning, when sleep wouldn't come, looking for negligence, waiting for cruelty, preparing to catch the next betrayal before it destroyed what little his daughters had left. When Luna Adeyemi walked into his office for the interview, he didn't stand. 27 years old. Nursing background. Volunteer work. With disabled children, he slid a contract across the mahogany desk. "The protocols are strict, Miss Adeyemi. No deviation. No false promises. The medical consensus is clear." Luna's eyes met his with something he hadn't seen in years. Calm. Certainty. "Mr. Hale, your daughters don't need someone to manage their limitations. They need someone to see past them." He hired her because he was exhausted. She was number 18. She'd fail like the others. Leave like the others. Then he'd find number 19. But Luna didn't follow the protocols. She brought music into the therapy sessions, old hymns that filled the sterile playroom with warmth. She lifted the girls out of their wheelchairs without clearance, placing them on soft mats for guided floor exercises. She massaged their legs with oils that smelled like lavender and hope. She whispered affirmations while the twins did their stretches. "Your legs remember strength. Your body remembers wholeness." Richard watched through camera 04 and camera 07, his finger hovering over the termination call. Then Isla smiled. A real smile, not the practiced one she gave doctors. Charlotte's toes twitched during one of Luna's songs, a reflex that hadn't appeared in 3 years. Both girls started asking when Luna would arrive, waiting by the window like she was bringing Christmas morning with her. One night, reviewing footage from his hotel suite in Singapore, Richard saw something that made the room go silent around him. Luna was still there, 2 hours past her shift, sitting between the girls on the floor. Her hand was on Ayla's leg. Her forehead bowed. tears streaming down her face. "Father," she whispered, voice cracking. "These precious girls. The world keeps telling them what they'll never do. But I see them trying. I see them believing. And belief is where you plant miracles." She kissed Isla's forehead, then Charlotte's, stroked their hair with a tenderness that broke something open inside Richard's chest. "You are stronger than anyone knows. And God has not forgotten you." Richard stared at that screen until his eyes burned. Something shifted in him, something he'd buried the day Grace's heart stopped beating. He didn't fire Luna. Week after week, his daughters returned from some distant place. Their laughter came back. Their eyes brightened. They started asking questions about the world beyond wheelchairs. Then, Dr. Okafor called. "Mr. Hale, I need you to sit down. I've reviewed Ayla and Charlotte's latest scans. There's motor response activity we haven't seen since the injury. New nerve firing patterns. Muscle memory reconstruction. This is significant." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop and typed words he'd been too afraid to search for 5 years. Spinal cord injury, children recovery. Neural pathway regeneration. Neuroplasticity in pediatric patients. The research flooded his screen. Medical journals. Case studies. Recovery stories. Children defying prognoses. When given consistent therapeutic intervention, emotional support, belief-driven environments. It was all there. Published, peer-reviewed, documented, and he'd never looked. Not once in 5 years. He'd accepted the first diagnosis as gospel. Buried hope with his wife. Watched his daughters through screens instead of holding them on the floor beside Luna. This woman, earning a fraction of his daily income, had given them what his billions couldn't buy. She'd given them faith, and faith made them try. 6 weeks after Luna arrived, Richard was in Dubai closing an acquisition. Bone-tired, preparing to board his midnight flight home, he pulled his phone from his jacket pocket. One last check before takeoff. One last glance at camera 07. Motion detected. Playroom. He tapped the notification, and the feed loaded. What he saw made the terminal spin around him. But before you see what shattered Richard Hale's understanding of possible, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and comment where you're watching from. Because what happens next will make you believe in things you thought only existed in prayers. 5 years ago, Richard Hale's world ended on a June morning. But it wasn't until Luna Adeyemi arrived that he realized he'd been living in the ruins ever since. Luna didn't ask permission. That was the first problem. On her second day, Richard reviewed the overnight footage from camera 07 during his morning coffee. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Luna had the twins on the floor, not in their wheelchairs where they belonged, but on soft mats. Their legs stretched out in front of them. She was singing something low and rhythmic, her hands moving in slow circles over their calves, their knees, their thighs. Isla's head was tilted back, eyes closed. Charlotte was watching Luna's face like she was seeing sunlight for the first time. Richard's finger hovered over the intercom button. This violated protocol. The physical therapist had a specific routine. Wheelchairs provided necessary support. Unsupervised floor exercises could cause injury, discomfort, regression, but he didn't press it. By day 4, Luna was lifting them. Fully lifting them out of their chairs, cradling them against her chest, swaying like they were infants. She whispered things Richard couldn't hear through the audio feed. Her lips moved in steady rhythm. Prayer, he realized. She was praying over his daughters. The anger came fast and cold. He pulled up her file, drafted the termination email. Subject line: immediate release due to protocol violations. His cursor blinked in the body of the message. Then he heard it. Laughter. Real laughter, the kind that came from the belly, the kind Grace used to pull from the girls during bath time. Richard's hands froze on the keyboard. He switched camera angles. Charlotte was giggling, full body shaking, as Luna tickled her sides. Isla was clapping, her face split wide with joy. Richard closed the laptop. That night he watched Luna settle the twins into bed. She pulled a small speaker from her bag and played something that sounded like old gospel music, the kind his grandmother used to hum on Sunday mornings. She sat between their beds, one hand on each girl's leg, and spoke in a voice so soft the microphone barely captured it. "Your legs will rise again. You hear me, sweet girls? Your legs will remember what they were made to do." Richard's chest constricted. "There's strength sleeping in these bones. We're going to wake it up." Isla's toes flexed. Richard leaned closer to the screen, rewound the footage, played it again. There. A definite movement. Small. Involuntary, maybe, but present. He told himself it was a spasm. Muscle memory misfiring. The body playing tricks. But 2 days later, Charlotte's leg twitched during one of Luna's songs. Then Ayla's ankle rotated slightly when Luna massaged it with oil that smelled like frankincense and hope. Luna started keeping a journal, reporting improvements Richard refused to believe. "Mr. Hale," Ayla lifted her knee slightly today during floor time. Charlotte's toes are responding to touch more consistently. Both girls are showing increased core strength. He dismissed every report. Wishful thinking, misinterpretation. False hope was cruelty disguised as optimism. Then came the night that changed everything. Richard was in London, reviewing contracts at 2 a.m. when he opened the live feed out of habit. Luna was still there, hours past her shift, kneeling between the twins' beds. Her head was bowed, hands raised slightly, palms up. The camera captured her voice clearly this time. "Spirit of strength, enter these legs." Her voice cracked with emotion. "Healing is your birthright, Ayla. Healing is your birthright, Charlotte. The world speaks limitation, but heaven speaks restoration." The room seemed to glow. Not literally, Richard told himself. Just the lamp's warm light catching the tears on Luna's face, the sheen of oil on the girl's skin, the golden hour quality of belief made visible. "These babies are chosen for a testimony. I know it in my bones, Lord. Let the miracle begin." Richard's hands were shaking. He started researching Luna. Found her volunteer history at a healing ministry in Lagos before she immigrated. Found testimonies from parents whose children had defied medical odds under her care. A boy with cerebral palsy who learned to walk. Twin girls with muscular dystrophy who regained arm mobility. She wasn't a fraud. She was a woman who'd seen the impossible happen enough times to expect it. Luna believed Ayla and Charlotte were next. Richard wanted to call her delusional. But delusion didn't explain the reflexes, the increased responsiveness, the way his daughters came alive in her presence. 3 weeks into Luna's employment, Richard was reviewing morning footage when he saw it. Camera 07. Timestamp 9:47 a.m. Luna was sitting cross-legged on the floor, singing. Ayla was lying on her back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Then her left knee lifted. Not a twitch, not a spasm. A deliberate, sustained lift. 1 inch off the mat. 2 inches. Trembling with effort, but rising. Richard's phone slipped from his hands and clattered onto his desk. He played it again, and again, and again. "No," he whispered to the empty office. "That's impossible." But the footage didn't lie. And somewhere in Dubai, 7,000 miles from his daughter's playroom, Richard Hale felt something he'd buried with his wife. Hope. Dr. Okafor's call came on a Thursday afternoon while Richard was in a board meeting. He almost sent it to voicemail. Almost. But neurologists didn't call unless something was wrong. So he excused himself and answered in the hallway. "Richard, I need you to sit down." His blood went cold. "What happened? Are the girls?" "They're fine. Better than fine, actually. That's why I'm calling." Papers rustled in the background. "I've been reviewing their latest scans from Tuesday's session. Richard, there's new nerve activity. Significant activity. Movement patterns that have been dormant for 5 years are suddenly firing." Richard's back hit the wall. "That's not possible. I thought the same thing. I ran the tests 3 times. Checked the equipment. Compared them against their baseline scans from 6 months ago. Doctor, Okafor's voice carried something Richard had never heard from him before. Wonder. Richard, something remarkable is happening to your daughters. The phone felt heavy in Richard's hand. What are you saying? I'm saying their bodies are remembering. Neural pathways are reforming. Whatever's been happening in their environment these past few weeks, don't stop. Because medically speaking, this shouldn't be happening, but it is. Richard ended the call and stood in that hallway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. 5 years. 5 years of accepting the prognosis. 5 years of watching his daughters exist in wheelchairs because the best doctors in 3 countries told him that was their fate. 5 years of grief hardening into resignation. And he'd been wrong. Not the doctors. Him. He'd given up. That Saturday, Richard drove to Riverside Cemetery for the first time in 8 months. Grace's headstone was simple. Beloved wife and mother. Gone too soon, but never forgotten. Richard knelt in the grass, something breaking loose in his chest. I failed them, he whispered. I failed you. The wind moved through the oak trees overhead. You fought so hard to bring them into this world. 4 years of trying. 2 losses. 7 months of bed rest. You nearly died twice before that delivery room. His voice cracked. And when the doctors said they'd never walk, I just accepted it. I didn't fight. I didn't hope. I put them in wheelchairs and built my life around their limitations. Tears came, hot and unstoppable. First time since the funeral. Luna's been here 3 weeks, and she's done what I couldn't do in 5 years. She made them believe. And I almost fired her for it. He pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm so sorry, Grace. I should have been the one telling them they could rise. I should have been the one praying over their legs. But I was too broken. Too afraid. The cemetery was silent, except for distant traffic and birdsong. She's giving them back to me. This woman I hired for $22 an hour is giving me back our daughters. When Richard returned home that evening, he didn't announce himself. He stood in the hallway outside the playroom, watching through the cracked door. Luna sat cross-legged on the floor between Isla and Charlotte, their small hands in hers. Say it with me, babies. My legs are strong. My legs are strong, the twins repeated in unison, their voices small but certain. My body remembers wholeness. My body remembers wholeness. I will stand. I will stand. Luna squeezed their hands. Again. Louder this time. Tell your legs what they need to hear. I will stand, Charlotte shouted, grinning. I will stand, Isla echoed, her face fierce with determination. Richard's vision blurred. He turned away before they could see him, pressed his back against the wall, and wept silently in the hallway. The security camera mounted in the corner captured everything. But for once, Richard wasn't watching. He was feeling. Over the next 2 weeks, Richard stopped reviewing footage for violations. He watched for progress. Isla's ankle rotated 90 degrees during a massage session. Charlotte's thighs tensed when Luna guided her through resistance exercises. Both girls started pushing against Luna's hands during floor time, attempting to lift themselves, failing, trying again. Richard researched until his eyes burned. Neuroplasticity in pediatric patients. Neural pathway regeneration. Recovery beyond prognosis. The studies filled his screen. Children defying medical odds through consistent therapy, emotional support, belief-driven environments. And something the research called positive neurological stimulus. Luna was creating that stimulus. Through touch, through faith, through relentless affirmation that the girls' bodies could heal. It had always been possible. He just hadn't believed. When the Dubai trip came up, Richard almost declined. But the acquisition needed his signature, and he'd be gone less than 48 hours. He checked camera 0717 times during the flight. The night before he left, he watched Luna tuck the twins into bed. She kissed their foreheads, stroked their hair, then knelt between their beds one more time. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught every word. Tomorrow, my sweet girls. Tomorrow, you will rise. Richard's finger hovered over the screen. Something in Luna's tone made his pulse quicken. Not hope, certainty. Like she knew something the rest of them didn't. Like she'd already seen how this story ended. The motion alert came at 11:34 p.m. Dubai time. Richard was in the private terminal, exhausted from 18 hours of negotiations, waiting for his flight to board. He pulled out his phone more from habit than concern. Camera 07. Playroom. Probably Luna, doing bedtime routines late. He tapped the notification. The feed loaded, and Richard Hale's world stopped turning. The wheelchairs were there. Both of them. Positioned near the window, where they always sat. But they were empty. His breath caught. He enlarged the screen with trembling fingers, his mind racing through terrible possibilities. Fall. Injury. Emergency. Where were his daughters? Then the camera angle shifted as he swiped to a wider view. Luna was there, in the center of the playroom, kneeling on the soft mat. Her arms were stretched open, her face radiant with tears and something that looked like joy and prayer and expectation all woven together. And standing, trembling, 5 feet away from her, Isla, Charlotte, standing. Richard's phone nearly slipped from his hands. He gripped it tighter, his knuckles white, his entire body shaking. Ayla took a step. Her right foot lifted, wobbled, came down. Her small body swayed, her arms out for balance, her face scrunched with concentration. Then her left foot. Another step, clumsy, uncertain, but forward. Moving forward. "Oh God," Richard whispered. "Oh God, oh God." Charlotte followed her sister. 1 step, 2. Her legs trembled violently, but they held. They held. Luna was crying now, her hands still open, her voice a whisper. Richard couldn't hear but could see in the shape of her lips. "Come on, babies. Come to me. You can do it." Isla took 3 more steps and collapsed into Luna's arms, laughing. That sound, that pure, delighted laughter, shattered something inside Richard's chest. Charlotte stumbled forward, her legs giving out halfway, but Luna caught her, pulled both girls against her chest, rocking them, kissing their heads, weeping into their hair. The airport terminal spun around Richard. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the polished floor, the phone still clutched in his hand, watching the loop repeat as the feed continued. His daughters were walking. His daughters, who hadn't stood in 5 years, who had been given a life sentence in wheelchairs, who he'd mourned even while they lived, were walking. "Sir? Sir? Are you all right?" A flight attendant rushed over. Concern etched on her face. Richard couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He just shook his head, tears streaming down his face, his whole body racked with sobs he'd held back for 5 years. He didn't board the flight. He chartered a jet and left within the hour. The 15-hour journey back felt like drowning in slow motion. Richard watched the footage 200 times, watched his daughters take their first steps, watched them fall into Luna's embrace, watched the impossible become real. He'd built his entire existence around their limitations, and Luna had shattered every single one. When the car pulled up to the penthouse at dawn, Richard didn't wait for the driver. He ran. The playroom door was open. Morning light poured through the windows. Luna sat on the floor with Isla and Charlotte, guiding them through gentle stretches, their legs extended, their faces focused. She looked up when Richard entered. Her expression shifted, cautious, like she was bracing for anger or disbelief. Richard crossed the room in 4 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. "How?" His voice broke. "How did you do it?" Luna's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slowly. "I didn't, Mr. Hale." Her voice was barely a whisper. "God did. I only believed when you couldn't." Richard's face crumpled. "I gave up on them. You were grieving. I stopped hoping, but they never did." Luna placed her hand over his. "Children know how to hope, Mr. Hale. They just needed someone to hope with them." Richard turned to his daughters. Isla was watching him with wide, uncertain eyes. Charlotte chewed her bottom lip. "I'm sorry," Richard whispered, his throat tight. "I'm so sorry. I should have believed in you." I should have fought for you the way your mother would have." Isla's face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. "Daddy, we walked! We walked!" Charlotte shouted, bouncing where she sat. "Did you see?" Luna said we could, and we did. Richard pulled them both into his arms, burying his face in their hair, sobbing so hard his shoulders shook. "I saw, baby girls. I saw. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud." They wrapped their small arms around his neck and held on tight. That afternoon, Richard called the security company. "I want every camera removed. Every single one." By evening, the walls were bare. The feeds went dark. Richard didn't need to watch his daughters from a distance anymore. He needed to be in the room with them. He fired Dr. Okafor's entire team, the ones who'd spoken in absolutes and limitations. He hired a holistic rehabilitation specialist, a movement therapist, a pediatric neurologist who believed in miracles and neuroplasticity in equal measure. And he sat down with Luna in his office, a new contract on the desk between them. "I want you to stay, not as a maid, as their full-time caregiver and rehabilitation partner. Whatever salary you want, whatever resources you need, I'm giving you complete authority over their therapy program." Luna smiled, that same quiet certainty he'd seen the day she was hired. "I don't need authority, Mr. Hale. I just need you to believe with me." Richard's voice was hoarse. "I do now. I promise you, I do." 6 months later, Richard stood at the kitchen window watching the garden. Isla and Charlotte were running, not walking, running, their legs pumping, their hair flying behind them, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Luna chased after them, her own laughter mixing with theirs. The three of them playing tag in the afternoon sun. Richard pressed his palm against the glass, tears sliding silently down his face. Grace would have loved this. She would have stood right here, hand over her mouth, weeping with joy. "I see it now," Richard whispered, to the memory of his wife, to the miracle unfolding before him, to the God he'd stopped praying to years ago. "I see it." Some miracles don't announce themselves with thunder and lightning. They don't knock down your door demanding recognition. They happen quietly, in playrooms and hallways and moments you almost miss. They happen through the hands of women the world overlooks, through prayers whispered when no one's watching, through faith that refuses to accept what medicine calls final. They happen right under your surveillance cameras, in the spaces between grief and hope. And sometimes, a broken father has to lose everything before he can see what was possible all along. Not through his wealth, not through his control, but through belief, through love, through a maid who knew that wheelchairs were never meant to be the end of the story, just the beginning of a testimony.